is a nightmare. Man, that's the way it seems. Life is a nightmare.
Welcome to Today in Horrible History, your daily moment of historical misfortune. For January 25th, 2022, we travel back to January 25th, 1971. On that date, Charles Manson and three of his female followers, Susan Atkins, Leslie Van Houten, and Patricia Krenwinkel, were found guilty of the Tate-LaBianca murders. The Manson case is probably the most sensationalized murder case in modern American history. It would already have been a big deal in its own merit, as a group of rampaging hippies staged 2 home invasions and stabbed a number of rich people to death, including a Hollywood actress with a late-term pregnancy. But it became further hyped by the best-selling book on the subject, Helter Skelter, by Los Angeles County Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi. The book might have exaggerated some events if such a thing is possible. What we do know is that Charles Manson was a small-time criminal who had a miserable childhood and had been in and out of institutions his entire life. Upon a prison release in California in 1967, he found himself in a changed world, one in which masses of disaffected teens had run away from home, seeking sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as well as, in many cases, new religious experience from cult leaders with all the answers. Manson, an older streetwise guitar player, was like a kid in a candy store, and quickly managed to gain control of a small group of primarily female followers. Manson relocated from Northern California to the Los Angeles area, where he and his so-called family took up residence at the rural Spahn Ranch, a former cowboy movie set where they lived communally, dealt drugs, used drugs, committed small robberies, including at least a couple that led to homicide. From this base, Manson made friends in the LA music industry. If you ask me, that's a step down. This included a member of the Beach Boys. Manson even sold them a song. According to most accounts, Manson's preached philosophy included the concept of the Helter Skelter, a coming race war between whites and blacks, which, after 5 angels would emerge as leaders. Of course, Manson himself would be one, and the 4 Beatles. This is a little less unhinged than it sounds at first, in that the Beatles' 1968 double album, which is actually simply titled The Beatles, but popularly called The White Album for obvious reasons, did contain one song, Paul McCartney's acoustic Blackbird, about the civil rights movement in the United States. That's about where any connection actually stops. The track Helter Skelter, however, which is probably the heaviest song the Beatles ever recorded, was simply a relationship song using the Helter Skelter as metaphor. Now, Helter Skelter is more a British term than an American one. It's a piece of carnival equipment that most Americans would probably just call a slide or a crazy slide or something like that. Manson probably didn't know that. According to Bugliosi, Manson believed the Beatles were speaking directly to him on the White Album. It's difficult to determine to what extent Manson actually believed what he preached, and to what extent this was rhetorical nonsense for his cult manipulation. Regardless, on the nights of August 9th and 10th, 1969, Manson and/or members of his Spahn Ranch family drove to some nicer areas of the western LA hills and murdered a total of 7 people. On the first night, they killed 5 people at the home of director Roman Polanski, who was not home, including most infamously his wife, actress Sharon Tate, who was visibly pregnant. She was stabbed 16 times. The group wrote "pig" and "death to pigs" on the walls of the home in their victims' blood, which Bugliosi says was in hopes of leading police to believe the murders were committed by black radicals. A false flag attack intended to foment the Helter Skelter race war. It's also possible this was simply a reasonable attempt to throw police off their trail, or equally possible that the group felt strongly about death to pigs and couldn't find a permanent marker. The following night, the group invaded the LaBianca home and killed 2 more people. It took the LAPD over a year to solve the murders. Eventually, a total of 6 Manson family members were found guilty of the murders and were sentenced to death, although a 1970s Supreme Court decision on the constitutionality of the death penalty resulted in commutation of sentences to lengthy prison terms. Many of the group were eventually released from prison, but Manson himself was repeatedly denied parole and died in prison in 2017. A fascinating counter-narrative has been proposed by countercultural icon Paul Krasner, publisher of The Realist and the most outrageous editor of Hustler magazine. Decades later, Krasner wrote that there were rumors that the LAPD discovered pornographic films featuring some of the Manson girls with some of their later victims. Krasner asserts one avenue of speculation for police had been that the cult's rich friends had screwed them on a drug deal or a sex deal of some sort, or broke off what had been an earlier lucrative relationship with the Manson group, and that the murders were more of a revenge killing and not nearly as random or as unhinged as they at first seemed. We will probably never know the full story. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more Today in Horrible History. Remember that after a brief visit, the rest of your day can only seem better